This is America Daily, bringing you the best in truthful news updates and in-depth reports happening now.
Google dropped its unofficial motto, "Don't be evil," several years ago for "do the right thing." But as more and more Google insiders come forward with concerns the tech giant is trying to influence our elections, one has to wonder what Google's new motto really is. In today's episode, we take a closer look at Google's election tampering and recent documents released by Project Veritas. Welcome to America Daily. I'm your host, Jessica.
And I'm Matt.
On August 14th, Google whistleblower Zach Voorhees went public in an interview with Project Veritas.
My name is Zach Voorhees, and I was an employee at Google for 8 years. And the reason why I collected these documents was because I saw something dark and nefarious going on with the company. I felt that our entire election system was going to be compromised forever by this company that told the American public that it was not going to do any evil. And I saw that they were making really quick moves, not only in the documents, but also in the internal speeches that the executives were giving to the company, that they were intending to do that. They were intending to sculpt the information landscape so that they could create their own version of what was objectively true.
Voorhees had previously linked internal documents to Project Veritas anonymously, but decided to go public after getting a letter from Google. Google also allegedly called police to do a wellness check on him, seemingly to intimidate and discredit him. In June, Project Veritas published internal documents that showed algorithmic unfairness. Voorhees said the documents were widely available to all of Google's full-time employees. He's leaked nearly 1,000 documents, including a news blacklist. The news blacklist restricts certain websites from showing up on news feeds on Android devices.
The internal Google documents from the story given to us by Mr. Voorhees reverberated through the halls of Congress.
In this Project Veritas video, which I did watch last night, they allege that there are internal Google documents, which they put on the video, and this is what it said. For example, imagine that a Google image query for CEOs shows predominantly men. Even if it were a factually accurate representation of the world, it would be algorithmic unfairness.
In some cases, it may be appropriate to take no action if the system accurately affects current reality, while in other cases, it may be desirable to consider how we might help society reach a more fair and equitable state via product intervention.
What does that mean, Mr. Slater?
What do they mean by that?
So what they want to do is they want to act as gatekeepers between the user and the content that they're trying to access.
So this information about algorithmic fairness was given to Project Veritas by you.
That's correct.
How did you obtain this document?
So these documents were available to every single employee within the company that was full-time. And so as a full-time employee at the company, I just searched for some keywords and these documents started to pop up. And so once I started finding one document, I started finding keywords for other documents, and I would enter that in and continue this cycle until I had a treasure trove, an archive of documents that clearly spelled out the system, what they were intending to do in very clear language.
So what you're saying is the public's right to know this information has a far greater value than whatever they can do to you personally as a result of you sitting and going on camera talking about it.
That's right. I mean, if I'm just on camera, that's just some dude's opinion. And, you know, who knows what that person's thinking. When they see the documents themselves, they're going to be shocked, they're going to be terrified, and they're going to be like, how can Google so blatantly lie to the American public and lie to Congress when there is a pile of evidence showing that what they're saying is untrue?
Here is another one of the documents that you leaked to us. This is, well, tell us what this is.
Okay, so this is a blacklist, one of many blacklists that are at Google. This particular blacklist is showing which news sites aren't going to show up underneath the search bar when people are searching on their Android phones. And what they're doing is that they're saying, okay, well, you know, Newsbusters, The Gateway Pundit, National Enquirer, Media Matters, Infowars, they're not going to appear, on their search results. And they're telling people that, oh, they don't have any blacklist. This is all done. They don't have any political ideology. They don't have any political bias. But it's really clear that they do. And, if Google wants to have political bias and they want to say that they've got political bias, that is their right as a company. But for them to go under oath and say that these blacklists don't exist, while employees like me are able to just search through the internal search engine of the company and see that they do, is hypocritical at the least, and it's perjury at the worst.
A lot of people ask us, what's the solution to this problem? Seems like what you're saying is the solution is to be honest about what it is that you're doing, at the very least. Do you think there are any solutions beyond that?
I think that Google needs they've got a fiduciary responsibility to their stockholders to inform them of what the business is doing, because they've invested into the company. And I'm a stockholder myself.
Well, Congress holds Google exempt, says they're just a platform. They're not interested in meddling in content or having an editorial position on anything. What do you say to that?
Google is playing both sides of the game. On one hand, they're saying that they are a platform and that they are immune from being sued for the content that they host on their website. On the other hand, they're acting as a publisher, in which they're determining the editorial agenda of these certain companies, and they're applying that. And if people don't fall in line with their editorial agenda, then their news articles get deboosted and deranked. And if people do fall in line with their editorial agenda, it gets boosted and pushed to the top.
You watched the Google whistleblower interview, right? What did you think?
And this is something that's really opened my eyes to find out about Google. Yeah, and this man, Zach Voorhees, he has a pretty wild story. I mean, he started out, he reached out to Project Veritas first anonymously, and so he was all shadowed out and you couldn't tell who it was telling the story, and then he decided to come out and actually expose who he is because he was fearing for his life. He thought that it was a very before he came out and everyone knew who he was, it would have been easy for Google to just wipe him off the face of the earth. And then, as he said, it would be a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and he actually went to a couple of lawyers to try to find out what Google's next step would be. And they told him that it was probably the first step in trying to ruin his life. So he set up a dead man switch. And if you haven't heard what those are, that's where if something happens to you, like you die under mysterious circumstances, then the documents would automatically be released to the public. And in the interview, Voorhees said he was making a lot of money, something like $260,000 per year. So he could have just kept collecting paychecks. That would have been the easy thing to do, but he said it was like lifting a burden off of his soul. Another interesting document that he leaked was about President Trump's infamous Kofifi tweet. So if you're not familiar with that, it was a tweet from 2017 where the president wrote, "Despite the constant negative press, Kofifi." Do you remember that? Everyone was making fun of him because it didn't make any sense. But apparently the word actually means "I will stand up" in Arabic. So it would have meant, despite the constant negative press, I will stand up. But the leaked documents show that Google was actually trying to change the Google translation of the term to discredit the president.
I actually do remember that because, back whenever, he was first elected president, my parents, they watch NBC, and they're more liberal. And so I kind of grew up as that. And I saw, since they watch NBC and I'm over there a lot, I saw them basically making fun of him for saying the word Kofifi. And of course, you've got memes all over the internet making fun of a lot of the stuff that the president says.
Yeah, it's really interesting to read those leaked documents. I didn't go through all of them, but I did see quite a lot of them. And the blacklisted search results were also really interesting. There were tons about the Las Vegas shooting, is really weird, the stuff that's actually in there. So if you're an investigative journalist, that list would be a great place to find your next topic. And you can actually download the documents from the Project Veritas website. If any of you listening have a chance to watch Zach Voorhees' interview with Project Veritas, I would highly recommend it. Next up, how Google swayed at least 2 million votes in the 2016 election. This summer, senior research psychologist Dr. Robert Epstein testified before Congress about why Google poses a serious threat to democracy. Here's a clip from his testimony.
You testified before this committee that Google's manipulation of votes gave at least 2.6 million additional votes to Hillary Clinton in the year 2016. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I want to make sure I understand. You personally supported and voted for Hillary Clinton.
I was a very strong public supporter of Hillary Clinton, yes.
So you're not dismayed that people voted for her, but your testimony is that Google is, through bias in search results, manipulating voters in a way they're not aware of.
On a massive scale. And what I'm saying is that I believe in democracy, I believe in the free and fair election, more than I have any kind of allegiance to a candidate or a party.
And looking forward, if I understood your testimony correctly, you said in subsequent elections, Google and Facebook and Twitter and big text manipulation could manipulate as many as 15 million votes in a subsequent election?
In 2020, if all these companies are supporting the same candidate, there are 15 million votes on the line that can be shifted without people's knowledge and without leaving a paper trail for authorities to trace.
Now, you described the Go Vote reminder, and you said it wasn't a public service announcement, but rather manipulation. Can you explain how? I'm not sure everyone followed the details of that.
Well, sure. If on Election Day in 2016, if Mark Zuckerberg, for example, had chosen to send out a Go Vote reminder, say just to Democrats, and no one would have known if he had done this, that would have given that day an additional at least 450,000 votes to Democrats. And we know this without doubt because of Facebook's own published data, because they did an experiment that they didn't tell anyone about during the 2010 election. They published it in 2012. It had 60 million Facebook users involved. They sent out a Go Vote reminder, and they got something like 360,000 more people to get off their sofas and go vote who otherwise would have stayed home. The point is, I don't think that Mr. Zuckerberg sent out that reminder in 2016. I think he was overconfident. I think Google was overconfident. All these companies were. I don't think he sent that out. Without monitoring systems in place, we'll never know what these companies are doing. But the point is, in 2018, I'm sure they were more aggressive. We have lots of data to support that. And in 2020, you can bet that all of these companies are going to go all out. And the methods that they're using are invisible. They're subliminal. They're more powerful than most any effects I've ever seen in the behavioral sciences. And I've been in the behavioral sciences for almost 40 years.
You know, our Democratic colleagues on this committee often talk about what they view as the pernicious effect of big money and big corporate dollars. What you are testifying to is that a handful of Silicon Valley billionaires and giant corporations are able to spend millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars collectively, massively influencing the results of elections. And there's no accountability. You said, we don't know. We have no way of knowing if Google or Facebook or Twitter sends it to Democrats or Republicans, or how they bias it, because it's a black box with no transparency or accountability whatsoever. Am I understanding you correctly?
Senator, with respect, I must correct you.
Please.
If Mark Zuckerberg chooses to send out a Go Vote reminder just to Democrats on Election Day, that doesn't cost him a dime.
Fair enough. Do you happen to know who the Hillary Clinton campaign's #1 financial supporter was in the year 2016?
I think I do, but please remind me.
The number one financial supporter of the Hillary Clinton campaign in the 2016 election was the parent company of Google, Alphabet, who was our first witness. They were her number one financial donor, and your testimony is, through their deceptive search methods, they moved 2.6 million votes in her direction. I would think anybody, whether or not you favor one candidate or another, should be deeply dismayed about a handful of Silicon Valley billionaires having that much power over our elections to silently and deceptively shift vote outcomes.
Again, with respect, I must correct you. The 2.6 million is a rock bottom minimum. The range is between 2.6 and 10.4 million, depending on how aggressively they used the techniques that I've been studying now for 6.5 years.
The one thing that I got out of the video of Congress interviewing Robert Epstein is Robert Epstein mentioned that 2.6 million votes were given to Hillary Clinton just because Google had the influence to do so. And he said that that's on the low side of amount that the people at Google could potentially give to a candidate. He said it was anywhere between 2.6 million and 10.4 million votes, which is not a small number, definitely not a small number. And that's shocking to me and scary at the same time. I mean, that's wrong. That's taking away votes from the American people, which is one of the main things that this country, stands by, is it's for the people.
What's so concerning about this is that the bias is undetectable to people. So Google could be influencing our thoughts without us even knowing it. And in this case, it helped the Democratic Party, but Dr. Epstein said that he believes Google has affected a quarter of elections around the world since 2015. So it's not just in the US, and just the fact that Google can do this and is doing this should concern everyone, no matter which political party you vote for. Like Dr. Epstein, he voted for Hillary. He says he's not a fan of Trump. I mean, that really ups his credibility. I think that he actually supports the Democratic Party and he's against what big tech companies are doing. So he also said that the effect of what Google is doing is way worse than Russian ads or fake news stories, because with fake news and the Russian ads, you can physically see them and there's a lot of competition and you can make your own decision. But what the big tech companies are doing is invisible and non-competitive. So you think you're making your own decisions, but you really might not be.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I can say that I'm an example of this because, as I was saying earlier, my parents being more Democratic at first, when President Trump was elected, I was believing the media about how bad of a fit he was to be the president of this country and everything. And it wasn't really until I started doing more research and even working for this company that I found out that he's not as bad as the media has portrayed him. And so now I distrust a lot of the major news companies because of just the sheer, I don't want to use the word, but the sheer nonsense that they're putting up on there.
Coming up, is Google working with the Chinese Communist Party? In December, Google CEO Sundar Pichai testified before Congress.
More than 90% of all internet searches take place on Google or its subsidiary YouTube, and they are curating what we see. Google has long faced criticism for manipulating search results to censor conservatives. Conservative individuals and organizations have had their pro-Trump content tagged as hate speech or had their content reduced in search results. So what are you going to improve that situation?
Congressman, thanks for the question. If I may, some of the studies you mentioned, we have investigated those. There are other studies which have looked at it. We have found issues with the methodology and the sample size and so on. But let me step back and say, providing users with high quality, accurate, and trusted information is sacrosanct to us. It's what our principles are, and our business interests, our natural long-term incentives are aligned with that. We want to serve users everywhere, and we need to earn their trust in doing so.
The operating environment in China has deteriorated with respect to surveillance, censorship, and the like since Google first made the decision in 2010 to leave. So I want to ask very specifically, are any employees currently having product meetings on this Chinese project? And if not, when did those end?
We have undertaken an internal effort, but right now there are no plans to launch a search service in China, as I said earlier.
Are there any current discussions with any member of the Chinese government on launching this app?
Currently, we are not in discussions around launching a search product in China.
Are there any current discussions with members of the Chinese government about this?
This effort currently is an internal effort, and I'm happy to consult as well as be transparent to the extent we take steps towards launching a product in China.
And who at Google is leading the Dragonfly effort?
It's our efforts around building search. It's undertaken by our search teams, but these are distributed efforts. It's a limited effort internally currently.
Will you, Mr. Pichai, rule out launching a tool for surveillance and censorship in China while you are CEO of Google?
Congressman, I commit to engaging. One of the things which is important to us as a company, we have a stated mission of providing users with information. And so we think it's in our duty to explore possibilities to give users access to information. And, I have that commitment, but, as I said earlier on this, we'll be very thoughtful and we will engage widely as we make progress.
Did Google design a prototype for a search engine that could be used in China to censor content?
Congressman, we have undertaken an internal effort.
Did you create a prototype? There was a report in The Intercept that says a prototype for the censored search engine was designed.
We have developed and explored what search could look like if it were to be launched in a country like China, and that's what we explored. And
how many months was that project ongoing?
We've had the project underway for a while, and there have been other projects which we have undertaken for a while, and we have never launched them too. So we are constantly exploring.
How many people were working on it?
The estimates, the number of engineers on the project have varied over time. At one point, we have had over 100 people working on it. It's my understanding.
Something that I did when researching this topic is I heard about this man, Peter Thiel, he was one of the co-founders of PayPal, and he's actually been lately kind of calling out Google for working for the Chinese Communist Party. Now, for one, there's not real substantial proof that they're doing this, and for two, maybe he's doing that a little bit because he's kind of a rival company. I don't know. But I can tell you what I did find out is that in 2017, Google set up an artificial intelligence research site in Beijing, China. The other thing that was kind of shocking, after hearing about that is in 2019, they didn't renew their contract with the Pentagon to work on artificial intelligence here. So something's not adding up there. If they're doing research in China, but not in America, that seems a little strange to me, don't you think?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Google has worked on artificial intelligence research with the Chinese university that gives the Chinese military AI resources. And Google also developed a search engine, Google.cn, for the Chinese regime to censor information in China. So that program ended in 2010, but then Google started another search engine project called Dragonfly, and that's what the senators were asking him about in those clips. And not only that, Google was also working with Huawei to develop smart speakers that could possibly spy on Americans in the US. More recently, with the Hong Kong protests, Google's translation app actually changed the phrase, "I am sad to see Hong Kong become part of China," to "I am happy." So Google has tried to downplay its relationship with the Chinese regime, but I'm not convinced. I mean, they were working with Huawei to develop listening devices to use here in the US.
Exactly. One other thing that I found kind of strange was, so there was the judiciary hearing with the CEO of Google. I didn't watch the whole thing because it was like 3.5 hours long, but I did see like the highlights. And one of the things that kind of caught my attention was, one of the congressmen asked him directly. He said, have you been working with the Chinese government? And his answer was that they have no plans to launch a web browser in China, which doesn't answer the question. And the guy even asked him again, and he again said the same thing. So to me, it's kind of like he's saying no, but it wasn't. It sounded like he was answering a different question to me, and that was also something I found it kind of strange. I mean, I'm not going to say that Google is working with China, the Chinese government, the CCP, but I'm saying that I wouldn't be surprised if they were, is kind of what I'm trying to say.
So, Matt, what are your takeaways? What do you think the solution is?
I would say I think the best thing to do is, whenever election time comes around, it's important to try to find the time to watch the presidential debates and to think of and to look at the different candidates and see which one you think would be the best fit to lead this country. And based on what they have to say, based on how they make you feel, and don't let the internet or the media influence how you feel about certain candidates. You have to be the one to decide yourself who is the best fit as the president. Also, don't just necessarily pick someone that aligns with your values. It's really just about what they have to say and how they are as a person.
There's a great documentary about this topic called The Creepy Line, and Dr. Robert Epstein is in it, as well as Jordan Peterson and others. So if you want to get a better understanding of how Google is influencing us, it spells it out really clearly in that documentary. And what they said in there is that Google doesn't have any competition. So if there were a bunch of different companies like Google that were all competing for us to use them, then we would have choices, and it could force Google to be more transparent. Another thing Dr. Epstein mentioned is that he has developed a monitoring system that allows his team to actually capture search results on computer screens before the results disappear. So he gets user permission to do that. And he's trying to build a bigger, better system for the 2020 election. That way we could instantly spot when Google is showing us politically biased search results, and when Twitter is suppressing tweets, and even when Facebook only sends register to vote reminders to people from one party. So I hope he gets that up for the 2020 election. He said upwards of 15 million votes are at stake. And if these big tech companies are able to get away with this invisible manipulation on a national scale, it would totally undermine our free and fair elections and our democracy.
You decided to come forward. There are people within Google who are maybe on the fence about coming forward, and as you said, they are afraid of what might happen to them or something else. What is your message to those people on the fence?
I'm hoping that those that want to do something are going to be compelled to act, and that we together can come together and defend ourselves in the case of litigation.
So what do you think about Google's push to influence us? Please let us know at americadaily.com. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
This is America Daily, bringing you the best in truthful news updates and in-depth reports happening now.